Just like this waterfall, our lives can rage out of control if we let it. This and That Trap wants to provide the escape that you need and want, bringing you nothing but the positive things in this world. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Welcome to this edition of This and That Trap. And today, I'd like to introduce you to my friend and coworker, Dante Tim.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. Good to see you too, Andy.
Good to see you. Tell me a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'm a meteorologist here at Channel 7. Been here for the past 3 years. Love it. I mean, I really couldn't ask for better. They're a great workplace, great group of people to work with, present company included here. So, it's a really great place, but loving the job, loving everything about it.
Okay. So, if you don't mind, I'd like to go through a few lists of plays.
Okay. Let's do it. All right.
Just some fun questions and everything.
Yeah.
What's your favorite movie?
That's a good question. Favorite movies. Wow. You know what? I think that because I love, sort of like adventure, fantasy type of stuff, the Avengers movies, I think are my favorites. Yeah. And you know what? I like the Avengers and I like the Star Wars movies in particular. The ones that came out with, like Natalie Portman and like
Right.
the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, that whole thing goes about the early to mid 2000s or something like that. So I'd say between the Star Wars, that particular group of Star Wars prequels and, the Avengers, those are probably my two favorite group of movies.
Have you ever watched Deadpool?
No, never watched it. I've heard about it, but I've never watched it.
I
Yeah.
want that. I'm not really too big on like superheroes or anything
Right.
like that.
Isn't it like the comedy version or something like that? They have a lot of comedy or something like that in there.
It's been about like when it first came out.
Yeah.
Since I watched it, but kind of, sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Comedy version, a lot of that.
Is that the one with Ryan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I went and watched it with my brother because he's a big Deadpool.
Oh, okay.
person. He likes Superman and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's all good. Something for everybody.
Yeah. So, what kind of music do you like?
I'm all over the map. I think, number one for me, because I am a born again Christian, gospel music, for me is number one, probably the most inspirational to me, does a lot for me. But then on top of that, I like, 90s pop, like your Backstreet Boys, Britney Spears, NSYNC, Christina Aguilera, all them, and 90s R&B, you know, so, those are probably, some of my favorite. And then, I like, salsa music too, as well as soca music. So two music styles from the Caribbean, that I like.
So, what's your favorite, decade or decade?
90s. I would say definitely the 90s. The 90s to me was the best decade of music.
Yeah, I really like.
Yeah.
I really like the 90s, but I know the 80s has some really classic music.
Yeah. The 80s had some good music too. I mean, I certainly wouldn't knock the 80s at all.
No.
But, the 90s just, I think with the 90s, because I was born in 77. So with the 90s is when I was becoming a teenager. You know, that was in my teen years and things like that. So, it meant a lot more. Whereas in the 80s, you know, I was a little kid. You know, I was listening to the music that my parents would listen to and things like that. But at the same time, with the 90s, I can identify with the music a little more. I can understand the lyrics, understand what's going on and what have you. So.
For me, I love music in general.
Mhm.
Like 80s and 90s were always
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
In the 90s, I actually used to make like cassette tapes.
Oh yeah. Who didn't?
Yeah,
Who didn't make mixtapes?
Well,
I mean, come on.
well, I used to actually act like I was a radio DJ.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool.
So yeah.
That's cool.
So that's kind of where the passion for radio came.
Oh, got you. You know what's weird is that I actually used to do that, but with TV. So I'd always wanted to be a news anchor. I didn't even always want to be a meteorologist. I wanted to be a news anchor before I was a meteorologist. And so what I would do, when I was in middle school and even in high school, I was a news junkie. I watched news all the time, but I would sit at the dining room table and I would have a stack of papers and I would have the TV on. And as the news anchors are on and presenting, I would do the same thing. So I would have my paper and I would shift my papers and read the news right along with them. And then I'd turn my head as if I was turning to a different camera like they were and everything. So as you were being the DJ back when you were, I was being the news anchor. So it all comes full circle. And
it's funny how that is.
Yeah.
Even though I was like, the only thing I've had big in radio and everything, I love
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't really see me being in front of the camera.
Other than this, but.
But yeah, you know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of used to it. So.
Right. But radio or podcasting or something like that would be more your wheelhouse. That would be your thing.
Right.
Yeah, I understand.
Right. Yeah. But, I mean, I would love to get with that.
Yeah.
All my experiences.
Right.
So, back to music. So, who is your absolute favorite singer? Gospel or even like?
Wow. You know what? Honestly, I don't even know, to be honest. I think that I just like so many people, so many groups, so many different sounds and what have you, that it would just be impossible for me to narrow down a favorite, in all honesty. Yeah. I'm just trying to think even the different genres, who would be my favorite. I don't even think I could narrow down a favorite, to be honest. Yeah. I do. You know, I think there's a song, that says, I love music as long as it's grooving. You know, so that's me. So, you know, that's just what I like, you know.
Have you been to any concerts?
You know what? Let me think about it. Yes. So I've been to, I'm trying to think of, so I've been to at least 3 concerts. One, when I worked at Ohio State, they would give us, if there were leftover tickets from the concerts at the Schottenstein Center, they would disperse them amongst different departments and ask anybody if they wanted to go. Sometimes it was at a small fee, and then sometimes it was free. And so they were handing out tickets to an Elton John concert, and it was free tickets if anybody wanted to go. So I was like, okay, fine. So I've been to an Elton John concert, and then there was the pop artist of the day. I think this was maybe the early 2000s. They would go around with the Christmas concerts. It was called Jingle Ball concert. So this particular Jingle Ball concert, I think it was Nelly Furtado. It was one of the boy bands, I forget. They weren't like one of the top, like NSYNC or Backstreet Boys or what have you. They were one of the littler boy bands, but they were there. Some other, you know, kind of poppy acts were there as well. So I went to a Jingle Ball concert, and then I mentioned that I like salsa music, and in particular, Cuban music, Cuban salsa, which I won't go into it. I don't listen to it anymore, but at the time I went to one of those concerts when they came to Columbus. It was called the, Buena Vista Social Club. So I went to that concert. So, and oddly enough, I went to that concert by myself. And so the type of person that I am, if I'm interested in something and my friends or family is not interested and I want to go to something, even if it's a movie, I will go by myself. I'm not afraid to go by myself. So I went to that concert by myself. I also went to, sometimes it is, you're right. I went to see, the third Lord of the Rings, by myself because I went home to Akron and my cousins and I were going to go see it. And so by the time I got to Akron, they're like, yeah, by the way, we've already seen it. Sorry. I'm like, dude, come on. And sometimes some of these movies you want to see in the theater. You don't want to see it when it comes to, you know, DVD or what have you. You watch it at home. You want to get the theater experience. So I said, well, all my other friends have seen it already, and nobody else, want to go see it again or what have you. So by the time I came home from Akron for that weekend, I said, I'm just going to go straight to the theater and I'm just going to go watch it by myself. So yeah, that's me.
Well, speaking of going back to the broadcasting side and everything, what's just because I've been in this business, like, what is some of the funniest stuff that you have encountered behind? I mean,
wow.
How many years have you been here?
I have been in broadcasting for 10 years now. Which isn't a very long time, but it's long enough to, be around and see some things. But, right, yeah. Well, I will tell you, so a couple of things that happened with me, behind the scenes and even in front of the scenes, in all honesty. So the cameras that we use, and but I don't know if people, watching know, the kind that we've used over the past 10 years that I've worked with, the camera stands still, but the head of the camera moves. And there are these big black sort of blinder things, so that the director in the control room can't necessarily see outside of these what's on either side. So usually you don't have anything on the side of these cameras because these things could swing at any minute. Well, in North Carolina, my anchor, her what we call IFB, where we can hear the control room, the batteries had went dead. And so I went over to get her some new batteries. And meanwhile, she's on camera. And I'm just kind of waiting until we take a video to where she's not on camera to hand her the battery so she can put it in the IFB to where she can hear the control room, what have you. Well, meanwhile, while I'm waiting, I'm standing next to this camera. And the director, it's time for the camera to move. Camera moves and smacks me in the face. Meanwhile, she's reading this serious murder story and starting to chuckle and trying to do everything she can not to laugh because she sees this camera smacks me in the face. So that was a hilarious moment there. Yeah, that was great. There was a time, where during the commercial breaks, I like to snack on things, especially when I work that shift. It was the morning. Sometimes you get a little hungry. You're going on air at 4:30 in the morning. So I decided I'm going to eat some, Doritos or something. And actually one got stuck in my throat and I started like coughing and choking and hacking up as soon as it came to me to do the weather. So I had to, take a little sip of water, what have you, kind of right on air in the middle of trying to give it the forecast because I decided to eat a Dorito in the commercial break. So there's some funny things that go on. Yeah.
This was in this last year.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Going back to a little bit serious side.
Okay.
But in 2019, here in the Dayton area, there on Memorial Day, we had some pretty wonderful.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me how that day went for you, and how you could see, as far as you being a meteorologist, the build up to the storms?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because so the type of forecaster that I am, I tend to be more of the in the moment or in the present day or not too far into the future, meaning that the data that I look at, I will look at the first few days, if there are any storm systems coming in, and look at that information. But if there's another storm system that's going to happen like 7 days out, I don't really worry about that until we get a little closer. But my colleague, Kirsty Zontini, she had mentioned to me in McCall, that, hey, Memorial Day looks interesting. Now, this was a week prior. And she was looking at some of the data, that there could be some severe weather and there could be some tornadoes or how you. She's like, Memorial Day could be kind of interesting, I'm just like, oh, okay, and I file it in the back of my mind. So we get closer to it and, we start to look at it and say, okay, there could be a few tornadoes, a lot of severe thunderstorms, what have you, but, Really not really thinking anything more than that. Well, the day of, earlier in the day, we're still thinking, okay, I get in, it was on a, Monday. And so I get in at my normal shift at 9 in the morning, and, we're looking at data and looking at information and saying, okay, still thinking that there could be, a few severe thunderstorms, but there could also be a few tornadoes, but nothing outlandish. If I had to put a number to it, maybe there could be about 3 tornadoes or so, But as McCall and I forecast in the afternoon, we're thinking, okay, this could be more of an event than we think. This could escalate a little more. The National Weather Service started to update their language. They put us in a higher risk category of seeing tornadoes and severe weather. And so we're thinking, oh, this could be significant. So nothing really happens by the time I go home at 6 o'clock. And so I'm thinking, okay, storms are going to come through. As we mentioned, a few severe thunderstorms, maybe a tornado or 2 or what have you. Well, by the time 10 o'clock or so roll around, I decide, let me turn on the TV and let me see, what's going on. Let me look at radar. Let me look at some information. At the time that I hear McCall say that there is a tornado, there is a thunderstorm that's tornado warned, and it's moving sort of parallel to 70 up towards the just west of the Trotwood area. I say, okay, I think I'm going to need to go on, because at that time there were other tornado warnings that were in effect. And at the same time, I get a text from our boss, which is the news director, asking any of the meteorologists if we could come in and kind of help McCall out. So it was actually a simultaneous thought. I'm getting dressed saying, okay, I need to go and help McCall. The news director says, hey, can anybody come and help McCall? And so I get out of my house. I lived in Harrison Township at the time, which was around the area, my apartment complex. I left and I drive down Main Street, and little did I know until the next morning that my apartment complex, like 5 minutes after I left, was hit by that tornado. And not only my complex, but it moved very similar to the direction I go to work. And so had I left 5 minutes later, I would have been caught up in that tornado. Now, luckily for me, actually, all praise to God for me, that my apartment itself didn't suffer any damage, but the apartment complex suffered quite a bit of damage. It wasn't uninhabitable, but there were big trees that were down. There were shingles that were off the roof. Some people's windows were blown out, things of that nature. But it was just by the hand of God that I left when I did, because I literally would have been in my car and God knows what would have happened. I did notice once I got downtown that there were some firemen that were, standing out, and they were taking pictures and looking and pointing. Like, God, I don't even want to know what they're pointing at and looking at. I'm just going to keep driving to work. So when I get into work, there were 6 tornado warnings. It was shortly before 11 o'clock. There were 6 tornado warnings that were on air and that were active. And so I take over for McCall, give her a little bit of a breather for just, for a few minutes. But, when it's something like that, when you got 6 tornado warnings, countless of severe thunderstorm warnings, it's really all hands on deck. You're going gangbusters. So she at least takes a few minutes break. We are then on the air all night long and all morning long the next day. I didn't leave the building until about 9 a.m. the next day. So I had been up for over 24 hours because I had gotten to work Monday morning at 9 a.m., went home. You go home and you do whatever, and by 10:30, I'm back at the station and working all throughout the night, and then didn't go home until 9 in the morning, which then I realized that in Harrison Township. There were poles and electricity lines down, apartment complexes and houses, destroyed and messed up, and into Trotwood, and the Speedway gas station at the corner of Main and Shoot Mill was, wiped out, and so it was just a mess. Didn't have any cell phone service, no running water, had to take a shower here at the station the next day. I mean, it was just, one of those crazy things. And the look at the state of my apartment complex was just unreal to me. And I had spent 5.5 years in Hurricane Alley in eastern North Carolina and thought, surely this Ohio boy, when I go down to North Carolina, going to get wiped out by some hurricane or something because I have no idea what's going on. But little did I know, no, it's not until you come back to Ohio that you're going to get affected by a tornado. So that's what happened the night of those tornadoes. It was just a really phenomenal setup in the atmosphere that was really conducive to tornadoes. And we probably won't see anything like that again, if not for a very long time. But things change, things happen. So.
I mean, just thinking back to that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at that time, we have had or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
a 2-year-old boy.
Yeah.
We don't have a basement
Mm-hmm.
or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a 60-plus-pound box.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
so all of us had to, my wife, my boy, and the dog, all had to do.
Yeah. Yep.
How?
It wasn't right. No. You know what, Andy? It's so funny because when we went out to do stories on that, the days after and the weeks after, and I had talked to a couple in Trotwood who said that their elderly, one of the mothers of one of either the husband or the wife, was at the house by herself, and they had went to Walmart to go pick up some things, and the tornado came through, and they told her, get in the bathtub, go into the bathroom, what have you. And they came back and, the roof is knocked off the house. Granny's fine, the mother's fine and everything. But, it's those type of things where you don't realize, like, where you're positioned at in the house, what you do, it can affect you. And it was honestly by the grace of God when I looked at, North Dixie, which is right up the street from me in Harrison Township. It literally looked like a bomb went off. It looked like a Hollywood set, to a makeshift tornado or a bomb or something like that. But that's what it was in real life. And to see that it was an EF4 and that nobody in Dayton, in a highly, metropolitan area, nobody was killed. That's, wow.
I know what in first, like, my wife and I actually live not too far away from the tornado.
Mm-hmm.
And the next morning after the tornado, the first thing we did was go out to the house.
Right.
Because there's 2 tornadoes.
Mm-hmm.
The first one we got in the closet with me, and I swear it was either first or second tornado.
Mm-hmm.
But we were in the closet, and I was like, oh my god, alcohol. They were in the closet. But that's fine. They're more important.
Yes, you're the man of the house. You got to protect your people.
Right. And we were when we were in the closet and everything, that first round,
Mm-hmm.
first or second, I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
It felt like either the funnel cloud was like right overhead,
Mm-hmm.
or like the tornado was right there.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's something that I have to say I've never experienced before. Was I could actually feel the foundation of the house.
Yeah.
Moved,
Yeah.
moved and everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I've never felt that.
That was the tornado. It's funny you should say that because when I was in North Carolina and we had a tornado move through one of the communities on a Friday, and I decided that next day that I was going to kind of go down and see some of the damage. Well, I met up with one of our reporters who was going down to do the same thing. And so I just kind of tagged along with her. But, so in that portion of North Carolina, it's eastern North Carolina, it's right on the coast. So they don't have basements because the ground is just, too mushy, if you will. And so, the foundation of the house was shifted at a 45-degree angle, because the tornado was that strong. And so the owner of the house was showing me, he said, hey, I don't have a basement. I have some little crawl space or what have you, but, look at my house, like it's shifted about 45 degrees. And so, absolutely, a strong tornado will do just that. It will move the foundation of your house, if not destroy it altogether, if it's strong enough.
Well, at the time, because the first round was supposed to go bad, but I just remember coming out of the closet. First round was then, or watching Channel 7.
Mm-hmm.
I remember watching Channel 7, and then see McCall say, "Get back in because there's another round coming."
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. So we get in the closet, and all of a sudden, that was the spooky one.
Yeah.
Because that shut off all electricity.
Right.
Eerie silence.
Right.
And I'm like, this is not cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and it's just to replay that night.
Mm-hmm.
Because actually, I was blindsided by it. I didn't think, I don't think a lot of people, because that was a really nice day Memorial Day.
It was a nice day, but we had mentioned that there was severe weather that was on the way. But, just as I mentioned, we were like, okay, sure, there's severe weather there, but throughout the afternoon, it had really ramped up. So I think that the messaging from noon was vastly different than when we came back on the air at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to say, okay, at noon we're like, okay, there's some severe thunderstorms, possibly a tornado or 2 or 3, whatever. But by 5 o'clock we were like, okay, listen, this could be serious. We could have a number of tornadoes, a number of damaging winds with severe weather and what have you. So we were warning the public that this could get intense tonight. So you got to be weather aware. But like you mentioned, it was Memorial Day. Everybody's like, enjoying, barbecuing, just kind of hanging out. But then when these storms blew through, like, whoa, this was a little more than what we expected. So.
If you were to give anybody advice going into meteorology or the broadcast, what would you tell?
Wow, that's there's a lot. Meteorology is very fun. I will say, depending on the age range, not even the age range in all honesty, but in college there's a lot of math and science. I am not a math and science person. The science that I like is the science of weather, because weather interests me and fascinates me. So I like learning about that. I don't like learning about the velocity of a ball and the arctangent and cotangent. I'm not a physics person at all, but I do like the science of weather. So one of the things that I would say is trudge through and just empower through, persevere through the math and the science in college, and then you get a rewarding career in meteorology. And there's so many things to do in meteorology. People don't just have to be in broadcasting, although that is the introduction to a lot of people to meteorology, because you don't know, meteorologists that work for the National Weather Service. You don't know meteorologists that work for the government, which is the National Weather Service, but the military. You don't know meteorologists that work for corporate America, like airlines, NASA. All those places have meteorologists. There are even, and I say these things on school visits too, to kind of introduce people to different facets of meteorology. You got people who are meteorologists that contract with, agriculture. I often tell the kids when I go to school visits that places like Post and Kellogg's and, those food companies, those are business people, or they are farmers. They're not meteorologists. So they often contract with meteorologists to say, okay, hey, or consult with us to tell us weather patterns, tell us how this will affect our crop. We're expecting droughts. So what's El Nino going to do this year? What's La Nina going to do? We're going to have floods. So how's that going to affect and so there's so many facets of meteorology. And so if meteorology is something that interests you, get through the math and the physics and learn about the science of meteorology that interests you, and it will be so rewarding. And there are different types of, not only meteorologists, but climatologists as well. Studying the long-term patterns of areas and global, patterns and how that affects us and what have you. So, it's a very rewarding career, very fun. For me, for the broadcasting side, it's best for me because of my personality. As I just mentioned, I'm not a real sciencey type of guy, and I also have an outgoing personality. I'm a people person. So broadcast meteorology is perfect for me. But there was a guy that I went to school with in college who had an internship at a TV station and an internship at the National Weather Service. And he said, "Oh my God, I hate the TV stations. I need to work for the National Weather Service," because he's a sciencey guy. He really genuinely and was passionate about meteorology. So with broadcasting and meteorology, I would say it's probably more broadcasting than meteorology, because you got to think about how you spend your 8 hours a day is communication. So I get together a forecast, but then I'm communicating that forecast all throughout the day on apps, on websites, on radio, on TV. So when we have newspaper, the newspaper. And so I'm a communication piece. So I spend more time doing that. You're going to classrooms, talking with kids. You're going to fairs and emceeing things and what have you. So, if someone wanted to go into broadcast meteorology, I would say just be prepared to know that you can still love the science, and there are avenues and outlets that you can do to stay engaged in the science. But your day-to-day job is going to be probably 60 to 70% broadcasting and communications as opposed to meteorology. But broadcasting is it's a business like any other. In that there's some ups and downs. They're going to be, you got to remember you're in the public eye. And so there's going to be, some things that you have to do in broadcasting that, may or may not comfort you, like wearing makeup, having to look pretty, if you will, having to, look a certain way, stay a nice dress or a suit. There are consultants in this business that'll tell you, depending on where you are, this is in, this is out. You should do this more. You should focus on that more. This and that, what have you. So, I think that internships help tremendously, because what an internship will do, especially if it's a good internship, it will give you a chance to see the realities of the business that you think you want to go into. And so if you get an internship in, let's say, maybe your junior year of college, that'll give you a chance to say either, I love this, I want to go into it and pursue it, or say, oh my God, what am I about to get myself into? Let me try and pivot in some other way to do something else. But for me, broadcasting is great.
Transitioning from all this, what is the next phase of your life?
I mean, eventually I'd like to get married. I mean, that's in the...
I'm not married. I'm already married.
I mean, that's the next phase. But, I mean, career-wise, and I think by the time this airs, I think everyone will have known that I've moved on from Dayton. But Cleveland, I'm from Akron. And so being back home in Northeast Ohio, being back home for a lot of people is, especially in this business, I often say there are two things that most people do, because in this business, you have to travel around a lot. You want to either get as high a market as you can to be, New York or Los Angeles or Chicago or network or what have you, or you want to get back as close to home as you can. And so because Northeast Ohio, Akron is home for me, that's in the Cleveland TV market. So, most of you now will know that I'm off to Cleveland. So, that is the next step for me. And that's probably, in all honesty, Andy, is probably where I'll just, for right now, that I know of, will just kind of let my TV career just stay. Because it is a great shop that I'm going to be working with, or that I do work with by the time you see this. It's, great hours too. I'm not a morning person at all. So the shift that I'm working is afternoon and early evening. So it's perfect for me. So, that would be the next step in the next phase of my career. And then, like I said, personal wise, at some point in time, I got to meet Mrs. Jones and then, settle down from there. There aren't going to be any little Dantes running around though. I don't want to have kids.
So do I need to play matchmaker?
Right. If there's any beautiful woman out there who wants to.
So, would you like to say something to Miami Valley?
You know what? Miami Valley, you all have been wonderful, to me. When I started out this journey at Channel 7, and Channel 7 had always been, a station that had prided themselves on news and professionalism and the seriousness of day-to-day news. I am, if most of you have watched me out there at all, I am not very serious at all. In that I can be serious when it needs to be, obviously, but, my personality is out there. I'm a social butterfly and I'm social. But that was not Channel 7's brand. And so every TV station has their own brand. Some are the silly station, some are the serious station. And so this was a serious station, but you all accepted me for who I was. And by the comments on social media, through emails, through meeting you in person, you have accepted who I am and even said that we would like to see more of that on Channel 7. So for that, I am eternally grateful to you all across the Miami Valley for inviting me into your living room, being so gracious to me and kind to me whenever I met you, whether it's at a gas station or a grocery store or a park. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and the Miami Valley will always have a place in my heart.
Awesome. One quick question.
Okay.
Have I converted you to who they named?
No. I am a Brown, dog pound, all the way.
Yeah. Go Bengals.
That's okay. I'm now up in Cleveland, so I'll get him to go to a Browns game sooner or later.
Right. They would have to be playing the Bengals. And what's the Bengals' record so far?
What's the Browns record so far?
They probably just lost to that.
Well, they did.
So Bengals 4 to the Browns
I think similar, in all honesty. But I think the teams that we lost to were dominant teams, like Kansas City, the Chargers, but they were close losses. It's not like we got like the brakes beat off of us. We were really competitive in those games. So, and then we lost today to Arizona. So,
I think the Browns are 3-2, and I think the Bengals are 4.
Okay.
Something like that. I don't know. I haven't looked at the standings yet. Yeah. So that is all the time.
Okay. It was fun. Thanks for having me.
I enjoyed it. Hope you guys did too. Well, we wish you the best on
Thank you.
your next adventure.
Appreciate it.
Adventure.
Yeah, the Adventures of Dante, right?
Yeah. So you take care.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate it.
You guys too.